Jack Nicholas is sitting in a bar having a drink with Stevie Wonder. Nicholas turns to him and asks, "How's the music career going?" Stevie Wonder nods, "Not too bad. My latest album cracked the top 10, so I can't complain. How about your golf?" Nicholas sighs. "Still making a bit of money, but I'm not winning as much as I used to. Been having some issues with my swing, but I think I've got it sorted now." Stevie nods knowingly. "Yeah, I get that. Whenever my swing goes off, I take a break, think it through, and when I come back, it just clicks." Nicholas stares at him, confused. "Wait, you play golf?" Stevie grins. "Of course, been playing for years." Nicholas, still baffled, asks, "But forgive me, I thought you were blind. How do you play?" Stevie smiles. "No offense taken. My caddy stands in the fairway and calls out to me. I listen for his voice and hit the ball towards him. When I get there, he moves ahead and does it again. On the green, he lies down with his head near the hole and calls to me, so I just putt towards his voice." Nicholas, amazed, asks, "That's incredible. What's your handicap?" Stevie shrugs. "I play off scratch." Nicholas is stunned. "We've got to play around sometime." Stevie nods. "Sure, but I only play for money. Never less than $100,000 a hole." Nicholas thinks for a moment, then says, "All right, I'm in. When do you want to play?" Stevie grins. "Any night next week works for me." A man decides to go fishing, but his favorite spot has recently been declared off limits. Undeterred, he spends 2 hours fishing and ends up with a bucket full of fish. Just then, a cop approaches. "Sir, fishing here is illegal. I'm going to have to fine you." Thinking fast, the man hides his fishing pole and says, "Oh, these? They're my pet fish. I bring them here every week, let them swim around, and when I whistle, they jump back into my bucket." The cop crosses his arms. "Really? All right, prove it. If they jump back in, I'll let you go." "No problem," the man says, then dumps the fish into the water. A few minutes pass. The cop frowns. "Well, when are the fish coming back?" The man looks at him, confused. "What fish?" On a particularly windy day, a rabbi was walking down the street when a strong gust blew his hat right off his head. He chased after it, but the wind kept carrying it farther away. A young non-Jewish man saw what was happening, sprinted after the hat, and managed to catch it. Grateful, the rabbi handed him $20 and blessed him. Feeling lucky, the young man decided to head to the racetrack. "With the rabbi's blessing, how can I lose?" he thought. Checking the race program, he noticed a horse named Top Hat running in the 5th race at 100-to-1 odds. Remembering the rabbi's hat, he put his entire $20 on it, and to his amazement, Top Hat won. Encouraged, he looked at the next race and saw a horse named Bowler at 30-to-1. Sticking with the hat theme, he bet all his winnings on Bowler and won again. That evening, he excitedly told his father the story. "So did you bring the money home?" his father asked. "No." The son sighed. "I lost it all in the last race. There was a horse named Chateau, and since Chateau means at in French, I figured he was a sure thing." His father smacked his forehead. "You fool! Hat in French is chapeau, not chateau." Shaking his head, he asked, "So who won the race?" The son groaned. "Some long shot, a Spanish horse named Sombrero." A woman walks into Bass Pro Shop to buy a rod and reel for her grandson's birthday. Not knowing much about fishing gear, she randomly picks one and heads to the counter. The clerk behind the register is wearing dark sunglasses. "Excuse me, sir," she says. "Can you tell me anything about this rod and reel?" The clerk smiles. "Ma'am, I'm completely blind, but if you drop it on the counter, I can tell you everything from the sound it makes." Skeptical but curious, she drops it. "That's a 6-foot Shakespeare graphite rod with a Zebo 404 reel and 10-pound test line. Great all-around combo, and it's on sale for $20. Her jaw drops. "That's incredible. I'll take it." As she opens her purse, her credit card slips out and lands on the floor. Without missing a beat, the clerk says, "That sounds like a MasterCard." She laughs and bends down to pick it up, accidentally letting out a little toot. Mortified, she stays quiet, realizing he can't possibly know it was her. The clerk rings up the sale. "That'll be $34.50. She frowns. "Wait, I thought you said $20? "Yes, ma'am. The rod and reel is $20, but the duck call is $11 and the bear repellent is $3.50. She sighs and swipes her MasterCard. The Detroit Lions coach is desperate to find the perfect quarterback. He scoured every college, checked the Canadian League, even scouted players in Europe. Nothing. Then one night, while watching the news, he sees footage from a war zone. In the background, a young soldier hurls a grenade with pinpoint accuracy, sending it through a tiny window 100 yards away. Kaboom! Then another grenade, 75 yards, straight down a chimney. Kablooey! Then, as a truck speeds by at 90 miles per hour, he casually tosses one through the driver's side window. Bullseye! The coach jumps up. That's my guy! He flies out, finds the soldier, brings him back, and trains him to play football. The Lions finally win the Super Bowl. The new quarterback is a hero. Cameras flash, fans chant his name, and confetti rains down. Through the excitement, the young man makes his one request. I just want to call my mother. He dials. Mom, I did it. I won the Super Bowl. There's a long silence. Then his mother sighs. Son, I don't think you understand. There are gunshots outside. The streets are in ruins. Your brothers got beaten up last week, and I have to keep your sister inside for her own safety. The quarterback's heart sinks. Oh, no, Mom. I'm so sorry. She continues, and I will never forgive you for making us move to Detroit. A man and his dog walk into a talent agent's office. Let's make this quick. I'm busy, the agent says, barely looking up. What's the act? It's not me, sir. It's my dog. He talks, the man declares. The agent rolls his eyes. Yeah? Sure. Look, I don't have time for this nonsense. Just listen, the man insists. He turns to the dog. What do you call the top of a house? Roof, says the dog, wagging his tail. The agent groans. Really? Wait, one more, the man says. How does sandpaper feel? Rough, the dog barks. The agent rubs his temples. Get out. Please, just one last question, the man begs. He turns to the dog. Who's the greatest baseball player of all time? Ruth, the dog says proudly. The agent leaps from his chair, shoves them both out the door, and slams it shut. As they sit on the sidewalk, the dog looks up at his owner and sighs. Should I have said DiMaggio? A woman is having an affair while her husband is at work. One afternoon, just as she and her lover are tangled up in bed, she hears a car pulling into the driveway. Oh no, my husband's home early. Quick, grab your clothes and jump out the window. Are you crazy? It's pouring rain out there, the boyfriend whispers frantically. If he catches us, the weather will be the least of your worries. He has a quick temper and an even quicker trigger finger. No more convincing needed. He grabs his clothes and leaps out the window, landing in the street, right in the middle of the town's annual marathon. Drenched and stark naked, he panics but keeps running, trying to blend in. A fellow runner eyes him curiously. Do you always run naked? Oh, yeah, he pants. Feels great. Total freedom. Another runner glances at the bundle under his arm. Do you always carry your clothes with you? Absolutely. That way I can get dressed as soon as I finish and head home. Then a third runner looks him up and down and smirks. Do you always wear a condom when you run? Only when it's raining. An American and a Russian wrestler were set to face off for the Olympic gold medal. Before the match, the American's coach pulled him aside. Listen, this Russian has never lost. He's got to move. The pretzel hold. No one escapes it. Whatever you do, don't let him get you in that hold. The wrestler nodded, determined. The match began, and the two circled each other, looking for an opening. Suddenly, the Russian lunged, wrapped up the American, and locked in the dreaded pretzel hold. A groan swept through the crowd. The coach buried his face in his hands. He knew it was over, but then a loud scream echoed through the arena. The crowd gasped, then erupted in cheers. The coach looked up just in time to see the Russian flying through the air, landing flat on his back. The American collapsed on top of him, securing the pin and the gold medal. Stunned, the coach rushed over. How in the world did you escape that hold? No one ever has. The wrestler shook his head. Coach, I was ready to give up, but then, just as I opened my eyes, I saw his, right in front of my face. I had nothing to lose, so with my last bit of strength, I bit down hard. The coach blinked. That's what made him let go. The wrestler sighed. No, but you'd be amazed how strong you get when you bite your own junk. A widower bought a house near a high school, looking forward to a peaceful retirement. For the first few weeks, all was calm. Then the school year began. Every afternoon, 3 boys would walk down the street gleefully banging on every bin they passed. They did this every day for a week, driving the old man crazy. Instead of getting angry, he hatched a plan. One afternoon, he stopped the boys and said, "You kids are great. I used to do the same thing when I was your age. In fact, I'd love to hear that sound every day. Tell you what, I'll give each of you $1 if you promise to keep it up." The boys, thrilled to get paid for their fun, happily agreed. A few days later, the man greeted them again, looking a bit sad. "Fellas, times are tough. I can only afford to pay you 50 cents each from now on." The boys grumbled but kept banging on the bins. A few days after that, the man approached them once more. "Look, I hate to do this, but my budget is tight. From now on, I can only pay you 25 cents each." The leader of the group scoffed. "What? You think we're going to waste our time banging on bins for just 25 cents? No way! We quit!" And from that day on, the old man enjoyed peace and quiet for the rest of his days. One day, Vladimir Putin visited an elementary school to give a lecture on why Russia, under his leadership, was the greatest country in the world. After his speech, he invited the students to ask questions. Nearly every hand shot up. After all, it's not every day you get to ask the president of Russia a question. Putin pointed to a girl with braids. "Yes, little one, what's your name?" "Hello, Mr. President. My name is Sasha, and I wanted to ask, do you think Russia will ever return to being the Soviet Union like in the past?" "Of course," Putin replied with a smile. "It's only a matter of time before the world realizes it's in their best interest." Next, he pointed to a boy with freckles. "Yes, you, young man. Hello, Mr. President. My name is Arkady, and I wanted to know, what's the secret to your success? You're the most powerful man in Russia." Putin chuckled. "In Russia, my boy, I am the most powerful man in the world. The secret, I simply know what's best for everyone, so they trust me to lead." Then he spotted a blond boy raising his hand. "And you?" "Hello, Mr. President. My name is Boris, and I wanted to ask, why did Russia invade Ukraine? And why did we annex Crimea?" Just as Boris finished his question, the school bell rang. The children hurried out for lunch. When the break was over, everyone returned to the lecture hall. Putin scanned the room and called on a girl with short hair. "Yes, dear. What's your question?" The girl stood up. "Hello, Mr. President. My name is Katya, and I wanted to ask, where's Boris?" A biology student writing his thesis on wasps is walking down the street when he spots something intriguing in a record store window, a vinyl titled, "Wasps of the World and the Sounds They Make." Excited, he rushes inside and tells the shopkeeper, "I'll take that wasp record in the window, please. I've listened to so many wasps, I bet I can identify every single one just by sound." The shopkeeper nods politely, takes his money, and hands him the record. Back home, the student eagerly puts it on. Bzzz. He frowns. That doesn't sound like anything he recognizes. Next track. Bzzz. Still nothing. Track after track, he can't identify a single wasp. Frustrated and doubting everything he thought he knew, he calls his professor over for help. When the professor arrives, the student is near tears. "I thought I was an expert, but I can't identify a single wasp on this whole record." The professor looks at the vinyl for a moment, then smiles. "Ah, I see the problem." "What? What is it? You've got it on the B-side." The teacher stood in front of the class and said, "All right, I'm going to hold something under my desk, and I want you to guess what it is." She reached down and held up her first mystery object. "This one is round and red." Little Johnny's hand shot up immediately, but the teacher ignored him. She knew his reputation. "A plum, miss?" guessed a girl. "No," the teacher said with a smile. "It's an apple, but I like the way you think." She reached for the next item. "This one is oval-shaped and green." Again, Johnny waved his hand frantically, but she called on another student. "An iguana, miss?" Billy offered. The teacher chuckled. "No, it's a kiwi, but I like the way you think." Johnny couldn't hold back any longer. "Oh, miss, I've got one," he said, grinning. "It's stiff, about an inch long, and has a red knob on the end." The teacher gasped. "Johnny, that's disgusting." Johnny smirked. "Nah, miss, it's a matchstick. But I like the way you think." At a wedding ceremony, just as the bride was walking down the aisle, Her dress snagged on something and tore slightly, revealing a small part. The best man noticed and couldn't help but stare. The groom, catching him in the act, asked, "What are you staring at?" With a smirk, the best man said, "Looks like I'm getting a sneak peek of dreamworld." The groom, not missing a beat, quickly ripped his own pants and said, "Well, enjoy, because you're about to get a glimpse of the underworld." One November afternoon, I picked up my daughter from kindergarten. She bounced into the car, buckled herself into the back seat, and practically exploded with excitement. "Guess what we learned today?" she chirped. "What's that?" I asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. "We learned that boys are different from girls," she announced proudly. I gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. "Oh," I said cautiously. "Yeah, my teacher told us that boys have a thing and girls don't." Well, technically true. I nodded, unsure of where this was going. She continued, "That's how girls know boys are boys. They see that thing that hangs down, and that's when they know." I did some quick mental math. We were still 5 minutes from home. This was already the longest car ride of my life. Then she added, "And when boys see girls, they puff up." I could feel my palms start to sweat. Well, she wasn't finished. "Why do girls like boys to have those things?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. What woman hasn't asked herself that question at least once? Well, honey. I stammered, trying to think of an answer. Luckily, she had her own explanation. "It's because it moves when they walk. The girls see that, and that's how they know they're boys. Then the boy sees the girl, and he puffs up, and the girl knows he likes her. Then they get married." She paused for dramatic effect, then delivered the kicker. "And then they get cooked." I blinked. "Wait, what?" By then, we had pulled into the garage. She hopped out of the car and proudly fished something out of her backpack. "I drew a picture," she beamed. "Want to see?" I wasn't sure I did, but I looked anyway, and there it was, a glorious, puffed-up tom turkey, his snood, that thing that hangs over his beak, the thing female turkeys apparently find irresistible, was magnificent. His tail feathers stood tall and proud. I laughed so hard I cried. She was a little offended at first, but when I told her I absolutely loved her drawing, and I did, she forgave me. That was the end of it for her. For me, not so much. Because every year since, when Thanksgiving rolls around, I remember that conversation, and to be honest, I haven't looked at a turkey or a man the same way since. An engineer, a physicist, and a mathematician are imprisoned. After several days, the warden realizes they haven't been fed in a while. Concerned, he and an officer head down to check on them. They arrive at the first cell, which held the engineer, but to their shock, it's empty. A gaping hole is in the wall. "How is that possible?" the officer exclaims. "That wall is solid concrete." The warden inspects the cell for a few minutes before emerging. "It looks like he fashioned a pickaxe out of the eating utensils we gave him and chipped his way out." They hurry to the second cell, which housed the physicist. Once again, the prisoner is gone, and there's another hole in the wall. The warden examines the room, flipping through some papers left on the bed. He nods. "According to these calculations, he determined the wall's weakest point and repeatedly struck it with a rock until it broke open. Finally, they reach the third cell where the mathematician was held, but he's still there, lying lifeless on the floor, starved to death." The officer sighs. "After the other two, I would have expected him to escape as well. It looks like he left some notes on the bed." The warden picks up the papers, skims through them, then shakes his head with a chuckle. "It seems he spent days writing rigorous proof that escaping was possible." 3 men die, a physicist, a philosopher, and the local town idiot. They arrive at the gates of heaven, where St. Peter stands before them. "Sorry, gentlemen," St. Peter says. "Heaven is getting a bit crowded. To get in, you must outsmart me, either with a question or a challenge." The physicalist steps forward confidently. "All right, then. Show me the complete mathematical formulation of the Higgs boson." Without hesitation, St. Peter snaps his fingers. A dozen whiteboards appear, and he effortlessly writes out the entire markup from memory. The physicist scrutinizes the equations, then sighs in defeat. Snap! He's sent straight to hell. Next, the philosopher steps forward, smirking. He knows better than to challenge St. Peter with something empirical. Fine, then. Show me all of Socrates' written works. Knowing that Socrates never wrote anything down, he expects to stump St. Peter. But with another snap, St. Peter produces a hefty stack of papers. The philosopher flips through them, baffled by teachings he's never heard of. "This can't be real," he protests. St. Peter chuckles. "Socrates and I have had plenty of deep conversation since he got here." Snap! The philosopher vanishes. Finally, the town idiot steps forward. "Can I give you a riddle instead?" St. Peter grins. "I love riddles, go ahead." The idiot thinks for a moment and says, "What goes up a hill with 6 legs, comes down with 4, goes back up with 2, and comes down with none?" St. Peter ponders. He strokes his beard. He mutters calculations under his breath. 5 minutes pass, and finally he sighs. "All right, you got me. I have no idea." With a snap, the gates of heaven swing open, and the idiot walks in triumphantly. But just as he's about to enter, he feels a tap on his shoulder. He turns to see St. Peter, curious as ever. "So," St. Peter asks, "what's the answer to your riddle?" The idiot shrugs. "How the heck should I know?" A student storms up to his professor, waving his exam. "Professor, why did you give me an 80? The professor glances at the paper. "Because that's what you deserved." The student thinks for a moment and smirks. "Tell you what, if I can bite my own eye, will you bump my grade to an 85? The professor raises an eyebrow, intrigued. "Sure, if you can do that, I'll change your grade." Without hesitation, the student pops out his glass eye and bites it. The professor, stunned, sighs and marks the exam 85. "All right," the student continues, "how about this? If I bite my own nose, will you make it a 90? The professor scoffs. "No way you can do that." But the student just grins, pulls out his dentures, and bites his own nose. The professor, now thoroughly baffled, shakes his head and changes the grade to 90. The student leans in one last time. "Okay, final offer. If I stand on this table and pee Coco Chanel perfume on you, will you give me a 100? The professor, now just wanting to see how far this madness can go, shrugs. "Fine, let's see it." The student climbs onto the table and promptly pees all over the professor. The professor, drenched, sniffs his soaked shirt and recoils in disgust. "What the hell? This isn't Coco Chanel. This is just piss." The student grins. "All right, fine. We'll leave it at 90. Little Timothy was a bright boy, smart, kind, and even fairly handsome. But there was one thing that set him apart. He had lost an eye in a fishing accident as a child. His family couldn't afford a glass eye, so his grandfather lovingly carved him one out of wood. Unfortunately, the other kids weren't so kind. They teased him relentlessly, crushing his self-esteem. But Timothy had had enough. The school dance was coming up, and he was determined to have a good time. There was a girl named Sally who had caught his eye. She was shy and often kept to herself, mostly because of the teasing she endured for her pronounced mustache, earning her the cruel nickname, Hair Lip. But Timothy didn't care about that. He thought she was the most beautiful girl in school. One day at lunch, he spotted her sitting alone, nibbling on a peanut butter sandwich. Summoning all his courage, he walked up to her. "Sally," he said, heart pounding, "I've seen you around for a while, and, well, would you like to go to the dance with me?" Sally's face lit up. Would I? Would I?" Timothy grinned until his nerves got the better of him. "Hair Lip?" he blurted out and ran away. 3 Englishmen were trekking through the desert, exhausted, thirsty, and starving. They stumbled upon a nomad with 2 camels, one alive, one very much dead. "You blokes look hungry," the nomad said. The men eagerly nodded. "Tell you what, I was about to eat this camel. I'll share it with you." The 3 men started arguing over who'd get what when one suggested, "Let's split it based on our football teams." "I support Liverpool," said the first. So he got the liver. "I support Hartlepool," said the second. So he got the heart. The last man sighed. I support Arsenal, but suddenly I'm not that hungry. Many years ago, a traveler was making his way through the Swiss mountains when night began to fall. With nowhere to stay, he approached a farmhouse and asked the farmer if he could spend the night. The farmer nodded. "You can sleep in the barn." As he settled in, the farmer's daughter asked, "Who's that man in the barn?" "Just a traveler passing through," the farmer replied. "He might be hungry," she suggested. So she prepared him a plate of food and took it out to the barn. An hour later, she returned, her hair full of straw, her dress slightly askew. She said nothing and went straight to bed. The farmer's wife, ever observant, then said, "Perhaps he's thirsty." She grabbed a bottle of wine and took it out to the barn. An hour later, she too returned, blouse buttoned incorrectly, a dreamy look in her eyes. She went straight to bed. At sunrise, the traveler continued on his journey, waving to the farmer as he disappeared up the mountain. When the daughter awoke and learned he was gone, she burst into tears. "How could he leave without even saying goodbye? We made such passionate love last night." The farmer's eyes bulged. Furious, he stormed outside, spotting the traveler already halfway up the mountain. "Hey, you slept with my daughter," he bellowed. The man turned, cupped his hands around his mouth, and shouted back, "Lard the old Eddie too!" A couple invites their family over for Thanksgiving dinner, eager to share a warm holiday meal together. As everyone gathers, the couple's children are running late. The mother-in-law sighs dramatically and mutters, Your children, always late." Eventually, the last guests arrive and everyone takes their seats. Without discussion, the mother-in-law plants herself at the head of the table. No one has the energy to argue. A few minutes pass, and hunger gets the best of her. She sighs again, louder this time. "Oh, what's with the food? Why is it always late?" Finally, the couple brings out the meal, mostly cooked by the wife, and everyone digs in. The night carries on with lively conversation until, midway through the main course, the mother-in-law abruptly stands up. "Oh," she groans, "I better start clearing the dishes so at least dessert won't be late." The moment she moves, the large wall clock hanging above crashes down, smashing her chair to pieces just inches from where she sat. Stunned silence fills the room. Then the wife quietly murmurs to herself, this clock, always late." A huge, muscular man with a tiny head walks into a bar and orders a beer. The bartender hands it over and says, "I'm not gay, but I gotta say, your physique is incredible, but why is your head so small?" The big guy nods, clearly used to the question. "Well," he begins, "one day I was out hunting and got lost in the woods. As I wandered near a stream, I heard someone crying for help. Turns out it was a frog. 'Kiss me,' the frog said. 'Kiss me, and I'll turn into a genie who will grant you 3 wishes.' I looked around, made sure no one was watching, and gave the frog a kiss. Poof! The frog turned into a stunning naked woman. 'You have 3 wishes,' she said. 'First, I wished for a body like Arnold Schwarzenegger.' She nodded, whispered a spell. Poof! Suddenly I was ripped, muscles bursting through my clothes. Then I wished to make love to her, right there by the stream. She smiled, laid down, and let's just say it was the best night of my life. Afterward, as we lay there, she whispered, 'You still have one more wish. What will it be?' So I thought for a moment and said, 'How about a little head?'" A man is shipwrecked in a storm and washes up on a deserted island. No ships ever pass, and for 10 long years he survives alone. Then one day he spots something unusual in the distance. It's not a ship. It's not a raft. As it gets closer, he sees it's a beautiful blonde woman in a wetsuit, emerging from the surf. Stunned, he watches as she walks up to him and says, "You poor thing. How long has it been since you had a cigarette?" 10 years, he replies. She unzips a waterproof pocket on her sleeve and pulls out a pack of cigarettes. He grabs one, lights up, and takes a long, blissful drag. "Oh, man, that's good." She smiles. "And how long has it been since you had a sip of bourbon?" Trembling, the man whispers, 10 years. She unzips another pocket, pulls out a flask, and hands it to him. He takes a swig. "This is the best day of my life." Then she slowly unzips the front of her wetsuit, leans in seductively, and whispers, And how long has it been since you had some real fun? The man falls to his knees, sobbing. Dear Lord, don't tell me you got a game of Twister in there.